of those fabulous fringe events supported by SME for Labour. And hopefully you're all here because you want to hear about the licence to build, which is being promoted by the Federation of Master Builders. And as part of that, we want to talk about how we protect consumers, particularly across the both at home when they're sort of having various things done, and also through the sort of new build housing process as well. So my name is Sarah Edwards, and I am the Member of Parliament for Tamworth. I also chair the all-party parliamentary group for SME house builders, so I've got a real interest in all elements of the sector and how that impacts both their ability to build and their desire to obviously build good quality homes right across the country, and also to tackle some of those really difficult and awkward areas where perhaps the larger house builders are not going to go into. But of course there are also people working on site, builders included, who are doing various other jobs that actually we're here to talk about today. So I am going to hand over to Brian to sort of set the scene for today and sort of bring us up to date so we can talk through the policy proposal and also what the problem is.
Thanks very much, Sarah, and great to be here this afternoon to talk about the licence to build. Those of you who probably don't know very much about the Federation of Master Builders, we are a trade association for small and micro building companies, the type of building company that you would have to do a home extension, new kitchen, new bathroom, or if you had a bit of money, you would actually have your dream home. So these are the builders you find in every village, every town, all across the country. And licence to build is something that the F&B has been calling for some time, because the simple fact is, and it is simple, is that anyone can call themselves a builder in this country. And the result of that, of course, is that we have cowboy builders, unscrupulous traders, who are affecting consumer confidence, they're leading to poor workmanship. And the F&B did some research this year looking into the scale of the problem, and a staggering £14.3 billion over the last 5 years was paid by homeowners to rogue traders. And there's a very poor understanding amongst the public about the protection that they have. From our survey, 47% of the public think that builders are licensed. And when we say builders are not licensed, 81% of the general public say yes, they should be in terms of consumer protection. And it's not just consumers. In terms of the industry itself, our F&B members, 86% of our members support the licensing of building companies. And the problem is, of course, it is about this market failure. You've got a situation where consumers are being ripped off because anyone can set themselves up as a building company. And this leaves the problem of consumers having to rely on recommendations, looking at online reviews, so it's less than satisfactory. In fact, 1/3 of homeowners say actually they're put off having work done because they don't know who to go to. Also, it's unsafe. The Health and Safety Executive did a survey a few years ago and reported that 49% of SME building sites are unsafe in some way. So there's a situation there of poor practices. And the fact that actually our industry is completely unregulated means actually we're suffering from poor mental health. There are sadly 2 suicides every working day in the building industry, and the mental health rate is 4 times higher than in any other part of the sector. So why have licensing? Well, the first reason would be to actually improve the image of the building industry. At a time when the Labour government wants to build 1.5 million new homes, when it wants to upgrade 5 million existing homes, we need a skilled workforce. And that means making sure that we've got competent people to do that work. So it would actually help boost the reputation of the building industry to have it licensed. It would also eliminate the cowboy builders and also help the Treasury, because we would be taking in the extra money that is currently being avoided. And of course, consumers would have greater protection from these unscrupulous traders. In terms of progress, the FNB has for a long time been calling for the licensing. Before the pandemic, we published a report called License to Build. Then, of course, during the pandemic, it went a bit quieter. But there is now a lot of activity happening. The Conservative MP, Mike Garnier, recently tabled a private members bill calling for the licensing of domestic building companies, which I have to say did attract cross-party support, but not the government support at that time. And then it's a question of what it would look like in practice. We are very much aware that actually the government is tight for cash, so it would have to be financed by the building industry. So we're calling for an independent licensing authority. Building companies would be registered, so it would be the company, not the individual, that would be licensed. The company would pay a license fee, and that license would be renewed every 3 to 5 years. And from the consumer's point of view, if there was a problem with the licensed building company, they could then contact the licensing authority to look into the matter and investigate any redress that might be needed. Also, the licensing authority could then start improving standards in the building industry by having some form of CPD to actually boost skills and training. And then finally, I just wanted to touch on some of the support that we're getting both politically and in the industry. So I'm very pleased actually that Bill is here, because the House of Commons Energy Security Net Zero Committee inquiry recently called for the licensing or accreditation of people doing retrofit work. The government has also set up a retrofit advisory panel, which I'm currently sitting on, which is looking at how to ensure standards for retrofit installers. There's an open discussion going on whether that should be some form of accreditation or indeed licensing. Later in October, Professor Peter Bonfield's inquiry into flood prevention is most likely to mention licensing of contractors to carry out the flood prevention work. And critically, the Grenfell Inquiry report, one of the 58 recommendations, calls for the licensing of principal contractors, which the government has said it would implement all 58 recommendations. So it's where it would actually really address this issue very neatly. Obviously, we need to talk about the practicalities, how this would work in practice, but it simply can't be right that anyone can be a builder in this country without any demonstration of competence or qualification. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brian. That was really helpful as a sort of introduction. I'm really pleased to have joining the panel Bill Esterson, and as mentioned, he's currently the chair of the Energy Security and Net Zero Select Committee, so very important in scrutinising the work that the government is doing and how they're getting on some of the commitments that they've made and some of the vision that we all share. So I think you are our lovely keynote speaker, so the floor is yours as to how you would like to take us on this topic.
Yeah, Sarah, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be on a panel with Brian, and we've worked together over many years when I was Shadow Business Minister and Shadow Industry Minister, and always took the advice of the FNB to heart, because you're representing the builders who are trying to do the right thing, trying to look after consumers, have a proper professional approach to how we work on people's home improvements, which is absolutely as it should be. And what you've come forward with now, I think, is very timely, and I think it is extremely well crafted. My select committee, and the select committee's role is to take evidence, make recommendations to government. As you said, we made the recommendation to have a licensing and accreditation system for the retrofit of up to 29 million homes in this country that could do better on their energy efficiency. The committee in evidence, this was part of Heating Our Homes inquiry, in evidence we heard some horror stories about insulation being terribly badly installed and the damage that caused to people's homes. We had homes that had been made where the cost of repair was more than the cost of the home. We had homes that were made unhealthy due to the increase in damp with mould and mushrooms going out of the walls, and terrible problems with the poor quality of air. And this cannot be right, and it all was down to the fact that you had installers who didn't have the expertise or the experience, and there was qualifications being involved. And just before our evidence session, I'm sure because we were having our evidence session, the government withdrew the ability for a number of those installers to be allowed to practice. Hopefully things are getting better, but unfortunately there's been a problem with insulation for very many years, whether it was cavity wall or spray insulation in lofts, or more recently fixed wall insulation, which is what my committee predominantly looked at in our inquiry. And I know, Sarah, you've had constituents who've been really badly affected by this as well. So a very welcome approach, because we need confidence. We need confidence as consumers that the people who come into our homes to carry out major works are going to do a good job, and they're going to do what they promise. And it's going to be cost effective, and it's you're not going to be ripped off. And yet all too often, we all know examples all too often where that is not what happens, whether it's insulation or other forms of home improvements. And in Merseyside we've had some particularly outrageous examples just recently. Two in my constituency, amongst others in my constituency, unfortunately. Glenn, who came to your event in Parliament, Brian, he and his wife lost £40,000 to a rogue trader who promised to do the work, started work, did it very, very badly, and then left the scene of the crime. Another constituent who was defrauded by a different rogue trader, a loss of £16,500, and then there's a third one now I think of it, who's £10,000 out of pocket, and the trader didn't turn up, and the trader, the rogue trader that Glenn, who I mentioned, was scammed by, is responsible to over £1 million worth of costs to people in 10 parliamentary constituencies in the northwest of England alone.
Wow.
And those are just the ones we know about. This has been in the media and has been the subject of legal action that's now concluded. And the problem is that what do people do? They close their business and they start another one. And it's very, very difficult for consumers to get redress. So better if we don't have this in the first place, if we have a reliable, a respected, a well-designed accreditation system of the sort that you're promoting and proposing. And you've mentioned the scheme, but having a dispute resolution process is really, really important. It's important for traders too, actually, because there are consumers who don't pay builders too, and some of this is because of the rogue trader problem. They think they can get away with not paying by saying, yeah, all builders are cowboys. So we've got to change that culture, so that builders are seen as really good quality professionals who are making a difference and really providing good quality work. I think having that balance of support for consumers and for traders, encouraging, promoting those who are doing a good job through the right kind of scheme is the way forward. We have a plethora of schemes that are all well-meaning: Trust a Trader, Trust Pilot, Check a Trade, Trustmark. I think there are probably others as well, but unfortunately nobody quite knows whether you're getting a good, reliable trader or not when just by looking at the mark. So some kind of scheme of the sort you're promoting, absolutely. And look, we've got to give people confidence. We've got to support the trade, and we have to do a lot better than we have been. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. That was very, very helpful. I'm conscious that we've got sort of a short panel discussion, but I think what I'll do is I'll shorten the panel discussion that we have, because I think actually it's much more interesting to hear from what you would like to ask, and have more of a discussion with the audience. So I think one of the things I just wanted to sort of get your thoughts on was, we're as a government, pushing towards getting the 1.5 million homes. We're also looking at, particularly from the committee's perspective, Bill, the energy net zero implications of upgrading, retrofitting homes. And yet, in my constituency, I've had damage done to homes by government approved, or they're paid for by the government.
Yeah, and funded. Yeah.
Absolutely, so funded by that, have caused damage to constituents' homes. Fortunately, they are trying to fix it and put it right, but I think they worked on their next door neighbour's house, and so it's the other neighbour whose roof has been damaged by this insulation, and we're now on the third roof. So so they at least do pick up the phone to my office, but it's ridiculous. So I think setting that standard is incredibly important. But what do you think about that time frame and the practicalities of perhaps having a licensing scheme, particularly when we're looking at some of these retrofit operations that we're going to need quite a lot of people to do if we're going to get to that, challenge?
Yeah, well, Brian will have his own thoughts on this, but something we heard about was the comparison between government-funded schemes and not having reliable tradespeople on the one hand, and schemes like GasSafe, which have operated for a very, very long time. If you are a gas engineer, you have to be properly trained, you have to be accredited, and everybody knows that a gas engineer coming into the home pretty much is going to provide a reliable, safe result. Some scheme along similar lines, and some of the safety matters are not entirely dissimilar actually, is a good way forward. So I think that's right, and especially when public money is involved, there's no excuse for not doing it. I have to say the problems with the scheme predate this government, because it was the existing scheme, but nevertheless it does need to be sorted out.
And what do you think, Brian, about maybe some of the practicalities of getting that type of licensing system off the ground? What, have you sort of looked at that and how you'd approach it? What advice would you be giving to the government about how to start this process? Because there's getting it underway, and then there's keeping tabs on it and getting people trained to a standard as well.
I think the retrofit market, which is big, we've got 29 million homes in this country that need some form of upgrading if we're going to meet zero carbon, but also reducing fuel poverty. So the government has said 5 million homes during the course of this parliament. That is some of that will be public money, and we need to make sure that that public money is being spent on competent people to carry out the retrofit work. We're seeing examples, though, haven't we, where it's being done very, very badly and damaging properties rather than improving properties. So we do need some form of licensing for those companies doing retrofit work. That could be the starting point. And I think actually, when you are thinking about retrofit work, if you're having a new kitchen, new bathroom, that's the time, because if you're having the kitchen ripped out, think about insulation of walls. And that's where the small builder comes in, and they need to be competent and licensed really to do that work. So I would be and will be pressing the government as part of its retrofit programme to say any public money needs to be done by licensed builders to ensure that actually consumers are protected, as well as the quality of the build. And this should expand out. I mean, ideally, it would be lovely to get to a sort of GasSafe where it's mandatory licensing and it's foolproof. And I think I'd also urge the government to look beyond the UK, because licensing operates very well in Australia. So in Australia, it is the company that is registered and an individual within the company. And there is that process of having a dispute resolution process for the consumer to go to if there's a problem with the quality of the work. So ideally, let's have a bill go through Parliament and make it mandatory, and then set up a licensing authority. We have got Trustmark, which is the government's endorsed standards. So the principle of having some form of accreditation already exists. It's just that Trustmark doesn't have the teeth really to enforce what is needed, and actually has led to some of the problems on the insulation, the 72 installers that cause all those problems. So the Trustmark could be developed or replicated some way into an independent licensing authority, which building companies would have to pay a license fee to.
And perhaps one last question before I turn to the audience. And if there was do you think that would sit, or is there somebody already who could step in and take it on, or is there anything that could be done in between? So
it's really important it's independent, because it's got to have consumer confidence. And where that sits, I don't really mind, provided it is truly independent, because it needs to be able to work across the entire building sector. And as I say, the industry then would be forced to pay an annual fee to that licensing authority. So we don't want to put the cost onto government, because we know, and it's strapped for cash. So it would be self-financing.
that's really helpful. Thank you very much. Well, I'm going to turn to the audience. I can see there is a roving mic, which is excellent. So thank you very much for that. So I'm going to take this gentleman on the end here, and then this gentleman here. And if you could just introduce yourself briefly and your background, and then try to give us a nice, concise question that we will be able to answer. Please, that would be very, very helpful. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Paul Gandy. I'm president of the Charles Institute Builder, and until very recently, after 40 years career, I was chief executive of one of our major contractors. Brian, absolutely agree with where you're trying to go with this, but we think, not quite sure, 600,000 SMEs in the construction sector. Do the maths, there's only 2.2 million people working in it, so they're very small. So rather than boil the ocean, where do you see this initially focusing? Most of those will be specialists, not general builders. They'll be your roofer or your insulator, or your installer or your saga or whatever. Now, many of them don't work in domestic. How do you envisage this kind of narrowing down to make it achievable?
Yeah, well, I think I'll go back to my previous answer. I think it should be on the retrofit market, because the government's got a stated ambition of 5 million homes. It will be using some public money to support those retrofits. So that would be the starting point, that any company carrying out retrofit work on a home should be licensed. And from there, because retrofit work is done by small building companies, and repair, maintenance, improvement work overlaps a retrofit, it would expand out. So that would be a logical first step, I would.
Yeah, can I add to that? I think because of the way the government has announced the Warm Homes Plan, there is going to be a far larger degree of certainty. This is a 5-year programme. Hopefully we've seen the last of the stop-start, constant changing that we had over the last few years. I think it was changing every 3 months, or it certainly seemed like it. And what that does is it enables building trade to gear up and to invest in their workforce. I think what has to be done is you have to ally this with an upskilling approach, multi-skilling people to be able to do the wide range of retrofit activities that we've been talking about. The same person should be able to do solar, battery installation, and heat pump installation, as well as retaining the ability to repair gas boilers and install them. I think that there's a capacity growth that I think is achievable, and hopefully that's what we will see, and that confidence and stability in the market will deliver.
That's great. Thank you very much. Next question, please.
Thank you. My name is Tawsi Panur. I'm Parliament Mayor and Councillor in Lucian Council now. And also on my second hat, I run a company which is Net Zero Installation, especially work on this retrofitting of Net Zero. And I also am a founder of an organization called Association of Net Zero Installers. Just 2 points, one for Brian, one for David. So Brian, you were talking about we need to have a licensing scheme. I think there is already a licensing scheme. There's not one actually, but as a retrofit installer company, we have to follow a 4. One, we have to follow a certification body, which is NICIC or NAPA. Then Trust Market does audit of all our. Then Scheme Designer, which is the EWI Pro, who buy the material, they have to pass us. And then there is insurance bodies, insurance back guarantee, which we have to give it to customer for 25 years, for example. But there are many. Only thing which we need is one streamlined process. I asked this question to Trustmark Chief Executive. I said, tell me in external wall insulation if there is a one rule book. He admitted there is no one rule book. One will fail you, another one will come and pass you, then another one will fail you. But that's what I think. I'm basically the lone voice protecting installer here, but that's the way it is. The question for Bill also, I've been following Bill actually, lot of events we are attending, and in government side and as a part of as a scrutiny chair, because we do a scrutiny also in local councils, I have seen last year when this saga happened of external wall installation, there you invited Trustmark, you invited other company, but there is nowhere a voice for installers who were installing there on the ground. We are the one who are working in a cold and hot weather, actually delivering that. And nowhere in policy we have a voice. Even Desnas have made a kind of a group for retrofitting, like a task force. There's no installer representation there. So I would like to, when are you inviting installers to actually take their view, because I think they are the ones who need to be listened.
Thank you very much. We're going to have 2 more hands just so I know where the mic is going. So we'll go next door next, and then we'll go to the gentleman at the back, and then we'll come to the front. Thank you. Who would like to go first? Do you want to go first, Brian?
Oh, yeah.
On the first part of that
question? On
question?
the first part of that question, actually, I think you're absolutely right about there are several accreditation schemes, and it's an extra cost on installers.
Yeah.
So if we could streamline the accreditation process, it would make it a lot easier and simpler for people to understand, both in the industry and for consumers. And of course, that would need real teeth. We know there have been some issues with Trustmark in terms of the external ventilation. So none of it is working as it should do, which is why, credit to the government, that the government set up a retrofit advisory panel to look at this very issue. We're actively discussing what are the problems in retrofit, what currently exists, and what we haven't got to this point yet, but actually what is the solution. It's very much a live issue, and it's great that the government is actually taking this very seriously.
That's brilliant. Bill?
Yeah, and I mean, Trustmark has been, under-resourced for years. It's gradually been reduced in size and ability to operate effectively. I mean, that was one of the things that came out of the evidence session we had with them. The same, of course, is true with trading standards in local authorities, and that lack of support has really made it harder to provide the oversight. So I think this is going to be really important. We had installer evidence. We have a lot of written evidence, as well as the panels that come and give oral evidence to us. So we heard from a lot of installers. We know there were good installers out there, and the key thing is to ensure that it's the good installers who have the support to carry on providing good results.
That's great. Thank you. If we could go to this lady here, please.
Thanks very much. Kira Box from Friends of the Earth. I'm really interested in the link between the government's long-term strategic approach and what this means on the ground. And I think we know that in terms of the climate, people are facing multiple threats and crises, and I've just gone and checked our stats for Bill's constituency. So we have 63% of homes are EPC D or lower. 26% of neighbourhoods are energy crisis hotspots, so places where people don't earn enough to pay for their heating. 42% of people are at risk of floods. But then at the same time, we've got 16 nurseries and 13 care homes, or other way around, in your constituency where people are at risk of high heat. So how should the government bring together its national adaptation plan and strategy, and how should it deliver in a way that works for private homeowners, for residential care settings, and for public buildings in a way that everyone can have trust and confidence in?
Thank you very much.
Property, because that's the biggest source of carbon emissions. I mean, ultimately, we need to see decent retrofit more widely than that. We need to see, and the Warm Homes Plan will target those in fuel poverty. I think that's absolutely right. What it will do is it will give the capacity, going back to what I was saying earlier, it will give the capacity for the industry to expand, the confidence to grow. And having that capacity is how you're then able to help, commercial buildings of one type or another, but also the other residential properties who don't qualify for the Warm Homes Plan. I mean, we've got to do this in a fair way. I mean, this goes to the heart of how we address the energy transition, actually, and because if we want to take people with us, it's got to be available to everyone. But starting with those in fuel poverty is a very good place to start, because the saving of £500 on average across the UK on bills is really, really significant to people in fuel poverty, as is the improvement in quality of health from that comes with it. So it's probably the answer is it's recognising you can't do it all in one go. So starting in the right place means that you're in the best place to go to everybody ultimately.
Brilliant. Would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I'd just like to say, actually, the government with its 5 million objective is fantastic, but the F&B has called for a long-term strategy for retrofit. 28 million homes is a vast project that would take 2 decades at least, probably, to do. And yet it needs to be done if we're going to hit the net zero target by 2050. So what we need is a sort of national retrofit strategy, treat it like an infrastructure project. Each home should have its own passport, an assessment of what can be done to that home to bring it up to a higher EPC rating. That's not to say that the home you need to do it overnight, but it would mean that you could actually do incremental change over the years, because we appreciate there's an enormous cost attached to that. Consumers need better information about what they can have done, and that would come from the building passport. We do need the competent workforce, because who's going to do that work? We need to train people in the building industry to actually carry out the work to the right level. And I would argue you would need some incentives to kickstart it. And I think one of the problems we've seen over the decades is governments have brought in short-term measures, the Green Deal or the Green Homes Grant Scheme. They're introduced and then taken away.
Yeah.
We need a long-term approach to this, and I'm sure
Absolutely.
Bill agrees with this as well. So we need a sensible discussion in this country beyond the political cycle. It should be a cross-party issue that we are committed to long-term upgrading our properties to make sure they're fit for purpose in the years ahead.
That's really helpful, and I think one of the things that's actually done List A, but quite a number of properties wouldn't have been able to have had certain things done on List A to get to the second point. So again, rather than saying, look, these are all your options, all of them are great, choose the one which you can A, afford, or B, do, and C, find someone who's able to do it, because that's the kind of the challenge that we were in. So I was going to come to this gentleman over here, then this person at the front, and then we will take you after that, and we should be okay, we're doing all right. Thank you.
Hi there, my name is Will Jameson. I'm director of Loughmore, which is bringing a group of expedition engineers, bringing a new boiler to the market. Same size as gas, going to be powered by LFP batteries. So we're dealing a lot with the retrofit market. And my very simple question is, you made a comment that the government has scrapped the cash, but not quite as scrapped the cash as the consumer. So surely what will happen with these, what the builders will do is they'll just pass the cost straight on to the consumer. How do you calculate the fees that they will be paying to make sure that that doesn't happen? How are they tiered to ensure that, is that done on turnover? Is it done on, how's it calculated?
So the fee for the
license.
Oh, the license. So it would be based on the size of the company. It wouldn't be a flat fee. It would be based on the size of the company. Obviously, you want to make it a lot cheaper for a sole trader, as you would for a sort of a much larger company with X million turnover.
Then you need space value on that as well. I mean, social housing costs would be significantly higher if for social housing work to be done. If it's being passed on to the end resident.
Well, the PITAE research, which we did in 2018, was saying that actually the minimum licence fee could be as little as £200, and then it would obviously escalate up according to the size of the company. But we're losing £14.2 billion over 5 years to unscrupulous traders. That money's being lost in the economy. So it makes sense to have that money in the industry so that the work is being done by competent people to protect consumers.
Thank you. Yes?
I'm David Reed. I was a retired health and safety consultant working in the construction industry for the past few years, and I found when I was working with small firms, I found it ridiculously easy to get accreditation for firms, which, fortunately, as far as I was concerned, I backed it up by doing inspections, making sure they were doing what they said they were going to do, but there was no real follow through by anybody else if I didn't do it. So I can quite understand firms getting qualifications which they don't really sort of work or achieve. But having been having my own house retrofitted, I found it was very, very difficult actually to sure that the firm that I work for actually did use people that were competent, even down to the basics of working out what sort of level floor looks like and things like that. And therefore there is a lot to do in this, and I do welcome everything that's the government's going to do forward, and encourage the industry to follow it through.
That's very helpful. Thank you. Did you want to comment, Bill, just briefly on that?
David, you reminded me. I've had my house retrofitted, and one of the tradespeople on a very small part of the job wasn't competent. I mean, they sorted it out, but you know, it's a massive challenge. And I have to say that the work overall is brilliant. So I'm very happy with it.
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, in terms of retrofit, there's the PALS 2035, but it doesn't really help the installer who's actually in someone's house doing the work. So we do need a retrofit standard that can be benchmarked. So there's a lot of work to be done on this, and again, that is something that will be discussed on the retrofit advisory panel, which is advising the government.
That's really helpful. Thank you very much. Next, and then after that, we'll go over to this side, and I'll take the lady at the back, and then the gentleman in front.
Thank you. My name is Kai Bangbola. Very much a comment. In terms of work that I do, I work with multinational enterprises on corporate sustainability reporting, advising those executives that want to do it properly. Back in 2008, we had the Climate Change Act, and at that time, as within the CIOB, we established Carbon Action 2050. I'd urge you to learn from that. That was launched in Parliament with Paul Morell back in 2011, and it was to advise all professionals in the built environment how to achieve net zero, how to achieve the standards. We worked very closely with industry, tier 1, tier 2, lots of the SMEs, even to the point of this gentleman establishing that if you're going to do external wall installation, then you must ensure that people have the right hand so that you don't come back and see somebody else doing the work with their other hand, so you have consistency. So for all of the areas that related to the 13,000 properties a week that we needed to do at that time in order to achieve standards across the built environment, 26 million homes back then. So there's a lot of learning. Come and speak to the CIAB about what we did, and so they can participate in that advisory group that we had, because we've lost a lot of ground. The point you made about consistency, you can't have a government that takes the shirts off the back of all of these different tiers across the sector. You do need that long-term thinking. So bear that very fiercely in mind. It's not a short-term matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to comment on that at all?
I totally agree. It's not a short-term measure. We need to be thinking long-term about that. And obviously, in terms of CIB, obviously we'll be looking to the CIB for advice on this, and the report that you mentioned that Paul Morell had written as well. I am thinking about my member who's a sort of general builder. They're going to people's homes doing the kitchens who may not have qualifications, professional qualifications, but these are the people that need to have better experience and a demonstration of competence, because if you're having a kitchen or bathroom done, that's the ideal opportunity to improve the fabric of the house. I think this will be done over a period of years rather than a sort of a rollout program that done in a short space of time.
Brilliant. Thank you.
In terms of consumer satisfaction, which has been below par, which is why we've got the code there. So I'm not saying anything like that should be dismantled, because there's a clear need for that. I think we've got a big enough task trying to license the RMI, the repair, maintenance and improvement sector. So my take on this, let's focus on the RMI sector, because I think the house building sector has got its own higher levels of competence already in place.
Thank you very much. And the gentleman just in front.
Thank you. Simon Storer, I'm Chief Executive of the Installation Manufacturers Association, trade body for rigid installation. Right, I mean, we all know that the challenges are immense, and we've been having this debate for many, many years, and I can't see us getting to the end of it anytime soon. I think one of the problems with construction is the lack of inspection and compliance, whether it's new build or retrofit, and therefore I I would suggest that we need to set up a much more robust framework in which this will operate, because without it, it doesn't matter what standards you set. If we're not building to them and nobody's inspecting them, then the standards can be anything. And we know that's the problem with new build. Many of the new build housing that's going on today will need to be retrofitted between now and 2050 because it's just not good enough and nobody is inspecting it. And I think that's the problem with retrofit as well, is that how do you police a scheme to ensure that what is being done is to an acceptable standard and that the work doesn't have to be repeated or improved between now and 2050.
That's really helpful, thank you. And I'll take one more question. Was there any, I thought there might have been one over here. There was a hand. If not, forever hold your peace. Fine. If you'd like to finish and both have a comment on this, because I'm just conscious of time and making sure that we wrap up and get the photo that SME house builders want. So please, Bill, do you want to comment on that one or first?
Yeah, I mean, all I was going to say, I bought a new house in 2002 that won awards for its energy efficiency, and it was a brownfield development which the government was responsible for, and I assumed doing so that this was going to be the standard for all new homes, and it was completely abandoned, and we still now have houses being built because we haven't got the new home standard in place yet that have minimal energy efficiency measures. Not all. There are some builders who are ahead of the curve here and doing well. See some in my constituency who changed halfway through the development to start building properly energy efficient homes with solar, battery, and heat pump technology included. But you know, we need to get on with the new home standard and stop adding to the backlog, because this is just going to carry on for decades, isn't it?
Thank you. And final word then to Brian.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've identified lots of issues here today, things that need to be tackled. Compliance, Simon, is absolutely going to be really important, but we need to set the standards. The Building Safety Act now is trickling down, so we are now having discussions about what competence means for the small builder, and that's quite a challenge in itself, understanding the difference between principal designer and principal contractor, and advising builders not to undertake work that they're not competent to do, but we haven't got a definition of competence, so there's an awful lot to be done. Just going back to the beginning of it, I don't think it's right that anyone could go out this afternoon, call themselves a builder, go into your home and start ripping at your kitchen, take some money, and then shut down the company and disappear. That can't be right. So the very basic is some form of licensing of those companies just to protect consumers, because we know every day someone is being ripped off by a cowboy builder, and then you get the programs on the television talking about this, but as if it's some form of entertainment. This is not acceptable, and for the government to deliver its ambitious targets, we need to attract people into our industry, and to do that they need to see an industry that is actually fit for purpose, that is going to have a degree of professionalism about it, and disassociate from the cowboy builders.
Thank you very much. That was very, very helpful as a wrap up, and I think just bringing our discussion to a close. And I wanted to thank everybody for all the different and very insightful points that you made, because I think what it has highlighted is quite how complicated this is to navigate, quite how many layers there are, and particularly the issue of time and the dedication that is required, and certainly that the government has put to it. That dedication to the long term gives that confidence within the market that we're moving towards a better place, but we need some standards put in place alongside that help us to get there with the least amount of tears possible. So thank you very much to our panellists. If we could give them a round of applause, please.